I could never.
No.
Like, I have cried after like a mediocre performance review. And like the idea that like you could just see in like such stark black and white, like does not excel at throwing. That would send me.
Is not very fast. Like, oh,
is
okay.
slow.
Hey, Betches sports fans, I'm Kait Maniscalco.
And I'm Zoe Schubot, and welcome back to Locker Room Talk.
The Super Bowl is over. We are now entering the NFL Combine.
But how have you been spending your time? What are you up to? What are you doing?
This is the most grueling 3 weeks for sports fans because there's not a lot going on. We're all just kind of waiting for like baseball season, for the draft. Then you have like the Masters coming up in April. So we're just kind of chilling. What about you?
I've been watching Severance. That's been a delight.
I heard good things about that.
It's like just as stressful as watching a football game. So I would say it really kind of gives me that same sense of anxiety that I feel when I'm watching a close football game. I can kind of like microdose that through watching that. We've put the Super Bowl to bed. The Eagles are probably still celebrating, but as far as everyone else is concerned, we're kind of ready to turn the page onto the new season. And the Combine is really the beginning of that.
The teams that were really bad last year, like my Jets, you get excited about like watching the prospects, like, ooh, I'm going to point out like, I want that one. I want that one. I want that one. And then when draft comes around,
you probably won't get anything that you want, but at least you get that moment of hope.
Yes. It's like shopping as a sports fan. You're
really
like
is.
shopping for your new players. It's so much fun.
It really is. And it's also like, I think it's fun to see the players you don't expect to maybe have like moments at the Combine where, you know, and then there's also the players that you kind of do expect. We're going to get into all of that today and kind of just break down what the Combine is and then also some things that we're going to be looking out for and things that fans should be looking out for as this whole thing kind of unfolds.
What is the NFL Combine? Crash course. We joke and say it's like a job interview, but then on top of that, they're going to make you go out there and like run, jump, do all these extra activities in spandex. Like that is essentially the essence of the Combine.
By the way, you're also wearing spandex. Yeah,
Yes.
It is a like days long, again, job interview. It's like a high stakes field day. So there's all kinds of different drills and activities. You've got the 40-yard dash, which is obviously everyone's favorite. You've got a lot of other things going on as well. There's the vertical jump, there's the cones drills, there's lots of different things. And then also obviously we'll see some throwing, we'll see some catching, we'll see all that kind of stuff as well. But I think the thing about the Combine that is interesting is obviously it is not just about the physical, right? Like this is the first opportunity that most of these teams get to sit down with these guys and kind of see who they are as people too.
100%.
If I recall correctly, it's 18-minute interviews that get conducted at the Combine. So these teams will sit down with these players and really kind of drill them on everything under the sun. And then they'll also get an opportunity to kind of like break down what their football IQ looks like. So they can show them plays, they can show them tape and say kind of like, what was going through your mind here? Or what would you do in this situation? And I think you have to remember like, these guys are children.
They're 21?
They are so young.
Babies.
And they are putting on a suit and tie and literally going to sit in there. It's not dissimilar to the way that like you come out of college and you go to a job interview and you're like shaking in your boots.
Yeah.
Except in this situation, it is an NFL contract on the line, which is like a much bigger deal.
I feel like the type of pressure, to your point, like the whiteboard. Last year, I remember Drake May like stole the show because he got all of them correct at like the Giants meeting. But I can't imagine having to, one, have the stress of a job interview, having to stress about the media, all vultures. The media scrum are vultures.
The literal just like swooping in.
At the Combine. It's insane. They ask them the most crazy questions. Actually, I'll just give you a crash course. This is what the media does. They go up to each Combine prospect and say, so have you met with the Titans yet? Have you met with the Jaguars yet? Have you met with the Giants yet? And the players are like, oh yes, oh no, I haven't. Oh yes, I've met with them yet. And I will never forget last year, poor sweet Caleb Williams. I have a special place in my heart for this man.
I love him so much.
Walks up to the podium and says, good morning, everyone. And the first person yells, Caleb, is the reason you're not competing in the Combine because you're scared? Like, what do you say to people who said you're scared to compete in the Combine? And Caleb's just like, it is 7 a.m. in the morning.
You came out hot.
Like they really do drill them. I feel bad for the players.
I know, it's hard. And the other thing too that you have to remember is like these guys aren't media trained yet.
Yes.
So like, you know, when players are getting hit with really hard questions after games, it's like you feel for them, but it's also like these are guys who know what they're doing. They know how to handle the media. Like again, these are literal children who like just came out of college. They're all confused. Like, and they have to stand here and really, I think this is probably one of the first time for a lot of these players that they're getting handled by the media in this way. And of course,
100%.
I mean, players coming from bigger programs, of course, have experience with the media and have spoken to the media before. But this is like on a national stage. And again, with the implication that like every single answer holds weight.
Yeah.
Because it could impact a really close decision on whether or not a team's going to want to draft you.
And I think for like our newer football fans, the combine, as you mentioned a little bit earlier, some of like those big prospects that you hear about, like Travis Hunter, like Sanders, they're not competing in the combine. So like this is a huge opportunity for the people that are like a little bit under the radar. Put on a really good combine performance, you could probably get a really good contract.
Yeah, exactly. It really is an opportunity for those kind of like dark horses to show what they're made of and really impress those scouts that are in attendance.
Yeah.
Can we also really quickly just talk about how thick your skin has to be to go through this process?
Dude.
Like we touched on it with the media, but also like I was going through some draft profiles just like online the other day and like quite literally, like all of your flaws are just written out for anyone on the internet to see. And like, I'm sorry, but I could never.
No.
Like, I have cried after like a mediocre performance review. And like the idea that like you could just see in like such stark black and white, like does not excel at throwing. Like that would send me.
Is not very fast. Like,
is slow. I think that you also have to give a lot of credit to these guys who are like able to go through that process and like not absolutely spiral into self-loathing.
I wonder, like, do they read their draft profile? That's what I want to know. That's what I would ask them at the combine. Be like, you guys taking a peruse at that?
I think they must.
They
I feel
have
like
to.
when you're that new and you're like not used to that attention yet, it's like it's kind of like you can't stop yourself. I think if it were me, I wouldn't be able to.
It's like the car crash analogy.
Yeah.
Like you have to watch. Like
You
I
kinda
need to
can't
see
look
what they
away.
have to say about me.
Yeah.
Probably the most exciting part about the combine is the 40-yard dash.
Everybody loves the 40-yard dash.
We're gonna take a page back, go over some of the
Some of
notable
our-
ones.
Yeah,
some of our favorites.
Some of the bests from memory lane.
Obviously, everyone's thinking like, oh, this is for like the speedy quick guys. You'd be surprised at the linemen that can bust
Just
down the
full
line
ass.
like, during the 40-yard dash. My jaw last year, watched this, I was like, he's running faster than me. He has 200 pounds on me, and he is running so much faster than I can get down there.
It has kind of been said that it's really not that indicative of any kind of like actual NFL success.
Yeah.
And that will bring us into our first little trip down memory lane, which is the fact that Tom Brady himself actually had kind of a horrible showing in the 40-yard dash.
Awful.
Like really not good. It was his time ranks among the slowest at the combine for a quarterback since 2000. Actually, he ended up running it faster at 46 years old than he did when he ran the combine in 2000.
I mean, it is inspirational that 20 years later he was able to run it faster, but I wonder if he was running away from something else. The poor man's been through it.
Maybe it was the fact that he like stopped eating nightshades. Maybe that's what powered him through to run it faster.
Actually, it's the TB12 diet that he's been on since the NFL.
It was only a 1/10 of a second, but still,
Still faster.
Still faster, and
20 years older?
Exactly. To even be able to run it in the same time 20 years later is
Yeah.
impressive. Obviously, things still worked out okay for Tom Brady, but he did have a very bad showing in the 40-yard dash.
Deion Sanders,
Coach Prime himself.
Coach Prime himself, blazing 40-yard dash line of 4.25, but you said they like nicked off a 1/10 of the second because they were doing it off the
So-
top of their head back then.
His official time was 4.25 seconds, but
Yes.
back when he ran the combine, which was in 1999, they were still timing by hand. So the way that they accounted for human error is they would add 2/10 of a second to everyone's time.
No, I'd be so mad.
No, I'm like, excuse
No, I'd
me.
be infuriated.
Yeah, that's like, give me what I deserve. So Deion Sanders had the 0.2 seconds added to his time, but he's still really like widely recognized for having like one of the fastest times ever.
Which brings us to our one and only Xavier Worthy, who broke
King of the 40-yard dash.
the combine record last year. That was actually insane because I knew he was fast, and I'm pretty sure he did it on like his second or third. Like I don't think he did it out of the gate.
Okay.
Because they give you a couple of opportunities to try. If they mess up the time, or if you take like a little bit of a step, they make you restart the entire thing. So
is
think
just
about
like-
how much pressure you have
Right when
lining
you're
up,
in the headspace, you're like ready to go.
and the timer's like, oh, sorry, I messed up. Get back. You have to start again.
It's like a false start.
Xavier Worthy ran it in 4.21. Absolutely nuts, and probably one of the main reasons why he was drafted by the Chiefs this year.
Yeah, I think that was like a big kind of like factor in their decision to use a first-round pick on him. Is like
100%.
the fastest man alive.
He's competing with Noah Lyles.
I was just
line him up
gonna
against
say,
Noah Lyles.
forget Tyreek. I want to see. I need Xavier Worthy. I need Noah Lyles. I need a head-to-head. Like that's crazy.
And there's nobody in the draft class this year that I think can even come close to
No, I
beating
don't think so.
Xavier.
I don't
They're a little bit slower boys.
Put it in their draft profiles.
Put in their draft profiles. Definitely slower than Xavier.
Okay, so we don't think anyone is gonna stand a chance to beat Xavier's 40-yard dash time, but I think there are a couple players to watch that are gonna kind of be our game changers in this year's combine. Each year, obviously, there's some dark horses that pop up, like we talked about, and that's kind of hard to know until we actually see how things unfold at the actual combine. But I think it's important to talk about some of those top name guys who we're really expecting to kind of see do some cool things.
Yep.
I think one of the biggest things to talk about is Travis Hunter,
Yes.
who obviously is fresh off of his Heisman win and who people are saying could maybe go first overall. That's the interesting thing about this draft class is like there's not really a consensus. Like, nope, it could be Travis, it could be Cam. I've heard some people say Abdul Carter. Like there's some different conversations about who's going to go first overall. But the interesting thing about Travis Hunter is he is an elite two-way player.
Yes.
And that's really rare in the NFL.
Oh my gosh.
He entered the combine as a cornerback, I believe, right?
Yes,
but he
he did.
also plays wide receiver.
Yep.
So there are some people saying he's going to run both drills at the combine, which would be interesting. What do you think?
I think it's very appealing to the NFL coaches for him to, you know, list as both a two-way player, but to run both at the combine. I mean, here's the thing. If you perform really well, you look like a superstar.
Of course.
But what if he's like significantly better in one than the other? Now you're kind of limiting your chances to be that two-way player, to be a cornerback and a wide receiver.
It is unlikely that he will be able to continue to play two ways in the NFL the way that he did in college. Like just based on like load management and the way that the NFL minutes are, they're different. Like
Totally.
So I don't think he will be able to do that. That said though, him entering the combine as a cornerback does not necessarily mean that that is what he's going to play in the NFL. We kind of don't know yet. It's still, time will tell.
He's going to run all of the combine drills.
So far, that's what everyone is saying.
That's
However,
fun.
we know that his teammate in Colorado, Shedeur Sanders, has chosen not to throw at the combine.
Do they just like not want to get hurt for their own personal one? Because I know they have their own at that college.
So the way that it's being framed, at least for Shedeur Sanders, is if you want to see me throw, you come to Colorado and see me throw. Like
I wish I was that good at something. Like you must come to me.
But that is kind of the rhetoric that he is putting out there. Is like, I will be throwing at pro day. And I don't totally blame him, only because it's like that's the environment that you're comfortable in. Like there's players around that you're comfortable with, whereas like the combine is unfamiliar. I'm always shocked when players choose not to throw at the combine because, you know, like Drake May did it last year.
Yep.
Caleb Williams didn't.
Jaden Daniels didn't.
So it's not uncommon, but
they
I think
like go and hang out.
Well, yeah, of
They're
course.
just like chilling.
It's not uncommon when someone is like locked in, you know they're going to be a top pick.
100%.
And I don't know that like Shedeur Sanders is quite there. I don't know that he is locked in enough to have made the decision to opt out.
To Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels' credit last year, like they knew they were going in the top 5. So of course they don't have to compete. Also, it probably just like limits your chances. What if you have a horrible pro day performance?
Yeah. Well, and the other thing about Shedeur Sanders, and I am not making any claims because I do not know him and I have never been acquainted with him at all. But there are rumblings that he's got a small ego.
Oh, no.
So
Shedeur Sanders?
I know.
Deion Sanders?
Crazy.
Son?
Crazy, that lineage. But so I do wonder if like that's at play a little bit too. Where
He
it's
100%
kind of,
has an ego.
When you think about the combine, you're not only being evaluated physically, you're being evaluated for your character.
Yes.
And I don't know, I cannot speak to it, but I wonder if that will factor into teams' decisions on whether or not they want to draft this player. Is like, is there a little bit of an attitude there? Like,
Yep.
What's at play?
He has his own podcast.
Yeah.
In college.
To be that young and already.
Have not played a single game in the NFL, hasn't thrown a
audacious.
pass.
Yeah.
And you're like, I have my own podcast.
He is like very much his own brand already. And that's
Totally.
kind of, not to get off topic, but that's kind of like what the NIL era has done, right?
Yes.
Is like these players coming out of college are already very like established personalities and established brands. Whereas like 3, 4, 5 years ago, they didn't really have that.
I know we talked about Shedeur a little bit, but the pressure he must feel being Deion Sanders' son heading into like what happens if he's not a top 10 draft pick? You know what I'm thinking of? Like Will Levis when they were all like,
hey, Will. Sitting there and they're just waiting.
They're like, Will, no, you're definitely going to be like
it's coming, Will, we promise. His girlfriend's like just sitting there. She's like, what's going on?
She's like, we got all dressed up.
She's like, I thought there was going to be a party. Like, what's happening?
Obviously, he's going to be in the top 10, but like the type of pressure that if he's not, I can't even imagine what he's probably thinking in his head.
That is a level of like expectation and a level of pressure that like none of us can really fathom.
No.
And greatness is just expected. It's
100%.
not even like something to strive for. It is just expected. And to your point, he will most likely go in the top 10. I don't think there's a world where he doesn't, especially because he's such a strong quarterback. But like that added level of pressure of like, yeah, Deion Sanders is your dad. Like, Yeah, that's some legacy shit.
They're saying Shedeur is the number 4 prospect, but they had him as the number 1 quarterback.
Really?
I don't know.
Well, that's interesting because speaking of, that does bring us into Cam Ward.
Exactly.
Coming out of Miami. It'll be interesting at the Combine because he is 100% going to be questioned about his decision to sit out the second half of the Pop-Tarts Bowl.
Yes.
Because it was such a close game. Obviously, Miami ends up losing.
Yep.
And he only played the first half. He sat out the second half. That's not uncommon, right? Like, we
Yes.
see that in a lot of bowl games where, like you were saying about not wanting to get hurt at the Combine, players don't want to get hurt, so they'll sit out those bowl games to make sure that they're like okay for the draft.
Yes.
He's gonna have to answer to those questions, and like I trust and believe that he will have a good response prepared.
I think there's enough time that has passed that I'm praying he is media trained and has a good response, because they're gonna, like we said, the media scrums at the Combine for some reason just want to grill 21-year-old kids, so they're going to ask him about it in 7 different ways, and hopefully it's a promising answer.
He seems to be a very confident guy.
Yes.
He has a quote that I'm going to read
no.
because I was like, oh boy, if you don't draft me, that's your fault.
Ooh.
You've got to remember, you're the same team that's got to play me for the rest of my career, and I'll remember that.
Honestly, I love that. I'm actually, that's a bar.
Listen,
I like that level of confidence.
I love someone who is betting on themselves to that extent already. I think that's like a great level of confidence that you want to see. One thing that I will say about a quote like that is you have to be careful because it can come back to bite you if you do not perform.
Agreed.
A couple years ago in the NHL draft, there was this player, Philip Zadina, who has gone on to not have a very good career. And I know because he plays for my Detroit Red Wings. He had a quote that was like, I'm going to make those teams regret passing on me. I'm going to fill their nets with pucks. And you know what he did not do? He did not fill anyone's net with pucks. And he ended up being... And then that quote kind of like followed him around and it became like kind of a meme. So I think... I love this for Cam Ward. I hope that this attitude works out for him.
Yeah.
But now this quote is going to stick to him. It's going to follow him. That said, when you make a quote like that and it does go well for you, again, to make a hockey analogy, I think about like Mark Messier being like, we're going to win.
Yep.
And then obviously the Rangers went on to win. It was incredible. They won the Stanley Cup. Then that follows you in a way that it's like, that's your legacy. So he's betting on himself. He's drawing that line in the sand and he's saying like, you're going to regret it if you don't draft me.
They're going to have to back it because unfortunately, like the Caleb Williams situation this year, he wasn't running his mouth or saying quotes, but like I always think that prospects that are hyped up so much, you quite literally have no idea how they're going to perform in the NFL. Like if you would have told me Caleb Williams would have the season that he did, granted the offensive line was, a shit show.
He did play on the Bears, but still though, that was not expected.
I like it. You know what? I'm going to say, I like it.
Cam Ward fan.
We need one. Bring him the Jets.
Bring him to the Jets.
We don't have a top 10 pick, I don't think.
It's so crazy when your team is good. Like you don't really, I'm not even like really thinking about the draft that much.
Me.
I know.
Woe is me.
All right, listen, I've had to for a really long time. This is like the first time.
You know what it is? Like when your team is good, you don't really worry about the draft. All right, so the Jets have the 7th overall pick.
There's no way Cam Ward's going to be there at
Cam
7.
Ward's not.
You might still get a quarterback at 7.
Yeah. Shedeur Sanders.
There you go. Now you're talking. That's it for this episode of Locker Room Talk.
Yep. Be sure to DM us on Instagram, YouTube, follow the Betches Sports page.
And then also make sure to tune in for live coverage of the NFL Scouting Combine beginning February 27th on NFL Network and NFL Plus.
I'm Kait Maniscalco.
And I'm Zoe Schubot. See you next time.